everybody. Welcome to another episode of Cressy's Ontario Landlord Series podcast. Today, we're joined by our good friend and colleague, Rob Lisi from Stonegate Legal Services, paralegal who understands and only deals with landlord and tenant issues. Today, we're going to have a conversation just to make sure that you guys out there are understanding some of the unfortunate mistakes, mishaps, things that have gone on in our industry that landlords have made in different ways. So hopefully that we're not making similar mistakes again and again. We're always here to educate and inform you guys. But please remember, this is not legal advice. This is a general conversation that Rob and I are having just to make sure that you guys out there are understanding and seeing that, hey, you're not the only ones maybe that were thinking something like this, but also that you need to be looking and understanding what the ramifications are, what carries down, and to always be surrounding yourself with proper guidance and great advice, not just getting it from your sister, perhaps, who may not be a landlord. But anyways, welcome to the show again, Rob. How are you today?
Good, good. Thanks for having me on. I'm really excited to be here and shoot me your questions. Go ahead.
Yeah, let's. I'm gonna bring up something that I know personally here. We'll chat about what a situation here is, and it's not that this client had made a mistake. She just really wasn't sure what she was doing, and she was trying to be a good landlord, be a good housing provider, and help her clients out, and not wanting to make the move. So I'll break it down a little bit for you, and then we can go at to what she maybe should have done or how. What and obviously the first answer is always talk to Rob right away. But here we go. So, a lady who has bought an investment property over a decade ago, rented it out from the very beginning with the intentions that maybe one day she would move back into it as it's in the city, closer to amenities, hospitals, and stuff like that, as she is getting later in her years. And her nephew actually bought the other half of this house, semi-detached. So they were there and there, and that was the plan, that she would then be back closer to them. Anyways, we won't get into too much of the personal stuff, but she has a tenant that's been in there 10 years. She very rarely increased rent because she was trying to be a nice landlord. We've all talked about that in different episodes about how we should be doing that, and I'll wait to get your full answer on all this. But never really raised rents. I did it periodically throughout those 10 years. One time, sorry, actually, she did it one time throughout there for a bigger amount that they agreed to, and they ended up signing a new lease moving forward with that new amount because it was a couple $100 that they increased and they had agreed to. Then, when this was all happening, she was wanting to come back into the city, and with the minimal rents that she was getting for this place wouldn't allow her to buy something else. She either had to move back into this, or they would have had to pay more money, I guess, so that she could have then bought something else with what she was moving back into, or however her math worked out. So when she was talking to them, she, I guess, slipped up and said, "Oh, you can stay if you paid me more money." Really, she does want to move back in, has wanted to move back in, and it's going to be in her best interest to be back in that place, especially because her nephew's there. She now is at wits or at an argument with this tenant because the tenant is saying this and that, and there's hearsay, and she now wants to know what she has to do. And if she came to in this situation, I guess we'll start there. How would you respond?
Okay, well, let's cover a few things first. I just took some notes. That's why I was looking down. Is landlords that does everything that you've told me, this is something that we hear every day from landlords. So number one, you said they rarely increase the rent. That is a big mistake. The landlord should always be increasing the rent every year because it's a use it or lose it. Okay. Because if you don't increase it and years go by, when that tenant needs to move on somewhere else, they are going to be looking at paying market value rent, which is going to be so much more than what they're paying right now. So that's number one. Number two, there should never be a new lease. A lease continues month to month automatically. And in regards to what you were saying, it sounded like an illegal rent increase. So you should only be raising it by the board, the guidelines. So that's important. Now, in regards to the problem that she had, is that the minute that you rent out the property, you need to understand that the RTA does kick in. So the Residential Tenancies Act does kick in. So that means that she has to give proper notice. So text message, emails, WhatsApp messages, what messenger messages are not considered as legal notices. You must give the N12 in this case, which would be for personal use of the property, which is a minimum 60 days notice, 1 month's rent compensation, and she would have to occupy the property for 1 year. Here's the dilemma that a lot of landlords don't realize is that when you serve an N12, you are serving a legal notice, meaning that you cannot retract a legal notice. More importantly, is that on the N12, on the second page, fourth paragraph, it tells the tenant if they do not agree with the notice that they have the right to remain in the property until there's an adjudication, which means the landlord would have to file with the landlord and tenant board for a hearing. To get to a hearing on an N12, and I'm just giving you rough estimates here, you're looking at about 6, even 8 months just to get to the board. Then, if your matter's heard, now you're looking at about 30 to 60 days to get the order. And then, depending where you are in Ontario, it could be 3 to 8 weeks for the sheriff to come and evict. So you're now looking at 1 year just to get the tenant out. And then the landlord or the owner now has to move in for 1 year. So that means that for the next 2 years, they cannot re rent or sell that property. So it's very important that yes, like you just said in the beginning, that you should be getting legal advice before doing anything and not relying on your sister or your cousin or your aunt that probably have never done this before.
Yeah. Sadly, a lot of us turn to people that we're comfortable with, that we know, to talk about what's going on in our world, our situations. And they may have something that they feel is good advice for you, but it might not be proper advice, or it might not be the only advice that you can get, the only option, right? And that's just kind of what we hear. And then we go, oh, that's what I need to do. So, again, that's something that we're always trying to make sure people understand is all of their options when they're going through something because,
So can I comment on something, Kevin, if you don't mind?
no,
Uh,
always.
I think what the problem is with a lot of people is that they're afraid to talk to legal reps because a lot of legal reps charge for consultations. And I think a lot of people rather try to figure out themselves rather than talking to someone that will give them proper information. I'm not trying to make a plug here, but in our office, we don't charge for an initial discovery call. We don't tell you what to do, we don't give you advice, but we give you at least options that are available. So at least you know what can be done. Because if you don't talk to someone and then you get stuck in a situation like you just mentioned, it can cost the landlord thousands of dollars. And there's that expression that people will jump over a dollar to pick up a nickel.
You know, you're right there about something, and that's people are they're losing lots of money right now. Normally, when they're looking for your type of advice, right? And one, I have no problem with you plugging Stonegate and how you guys are awesome and what you guys do because the fact of the free consultations is probably one of the reasons why our relation started off so great about 7 years ago now or so, just because we wanted to know exactly what was going on, and you guys were always there to make sure the guidance was provided. So, no, that is definite. But yeah, if you're losing thousands of dollars because a tenant isn't paying you rent, now you have to go spend what you're thinking is going to be a ton of more money to try to get something, or even just to figure out what's happening with the consultation. You're hesitant to do so. You're not wanting to throw, as I say, more money after bad money, but this is actually good money here, making sure you're getting the proper advice. And again, tenants are not paying their rent, and then they get free advice, right? They
Yeah.
get free counsel, free support, and here we are as landlords needing to pay for that same advice and counsel to counteract what they're being helped with. So landlords, make sure you're getting the advice. We'll make sure that somewhere along this or down below is always the link for Stonegate. And if you can't get to Stonegate, you can get to us and I can get you to them. As Rob said the other day when we were chatting to one of our clients, he just charges me triple time and overtime to talk to all you guys. So we'll make sure that everybody's out there looked after. Um, so you were talking to me about something off air. We've talked about cash for keys a few different times in that settlement when we're trying to have somebody move on so that it gives the landlord more flexibility to do whatever it is that they want to do after that tenant has left. You mentioned about something crazy with a realtor involved and a settlement of an amount that I think is astronomical.
Yeah,
Uh,
I can expand on that whenever
yeah,
you
do you
want.
want to tell the story to everybody out there?
Well, it's amazing because we were just talking about, like, you need to get proper advice, you need to use the right people. It's not just getting legal advice, it's also finding a realtor that understands their RTA at least minimal amount. So the situation was is that a realtor listed a multi-unit. I'm not sure if it was 3, 4, or 6, I don't remember the details. It was a estate sale, and the executor was not a family member. They accepted an offer. However, the realtor guaranteed vacant possession. And just so you know, in your agreement of purchase and sale on clause number 2, you cannot guarantee vacant possession because you don't know if the tenant or tenants are going to move out. So now the realtor put herself in a precarious position because she couldn't guarantee vacant possession. Luckily, there was only one tenant left in the property, but she asked for a cash for keys, but the amount was $150,000. And the realtor and the executor were in a position where they didn't have any other offers. If they didn't accept, they were going to be in breach of contract. The executor was at risk of being sued because she was the executor, non family, so someone separate. So they had no choice but to give this tenant $150,000. And the best part, Kevin, is that the tenant was only paying $800 a month, which is ridiculous. Now, that's not the end of the story. Remember, we were talking about, hiring the right people. Well, afterwards, that realtor did get sued because she breached the contract. They relied on the real estate agent for their knowledge and information on how to proceed with this contract. So that loss, actually, the estate started suing the real estate agent. I don't know the details of what happened, but it's important that anyone that's listening to this broadcast or this the thing that we're doing here is that you need to get the proper people doing the proper jobs. Get information, advice before listing a tenanted property because not all realtors know the ins and outs of what's going on. And that's why, as you know, we offer free education seminars to brokerages, realtors, investors so they stay out of trouble rather than getting them out of trouble.
Yeah. No. The landlord and tenant world is so big and it causes so much liability in our world as realtors. And a lot of realtors start off with the leases and helping out landlords or tenants find places because it's easier business. It's lower down on, I guess, the food chain or whatever, the fruit, the tree of business. You know what I mean? The easier fruit to pick. And a lot of people pass that business down. But there's a lot of realtors that are getting in a lot of trouble because they're not understanding what's going on with what they're doing and they're putting themselves into situations similar as you mentioned. That was with a sale, but they still didn't understand what was going on in the RTA. I know of instances where a realtor was sued because they didn't do any due diligence at
Yep,
all when placing a tenant in a landlord's property. Now we've talked before about buying and selling tenanted properties. We've talked about screening proper tenants and the due diligence that we need to do. And I'm sure we'll get into more of this all throughout other episodes and everything. But this is the utmost important thing is screening a tenant because once a tenant is in the property, they are in the property and there's due
absolutely,
diligence that
absolutely.
yeah, we have to do on all levels. You know, the as a realtor, as the landlord, if you're not hiring somebody, make sure you are really going through everything. I spoke to one of our tenants the other day, and they made a comment that, "Wow, it was so hard for me to get accepted for this place. I had to do this, this, and this." And they said, "And all my references got called." And I said, "Yeah, we need to make sure who you are." And actually, that landlord even doubled up on our due diligence and called as well. So
Yeah,
that's why he was. Asking again who this person was, and I said, "Oh, that's actually the landlord, and that's what they were doing. They wanted to make sure that everything jived, you know, because sometimes you might get an answer from one person and a different answer from another, and then questions are arise like, you know, what's going on, what's the situation, who is who, because we got to make sure we're putting great people in our units.
It's good that more awareness is coming out because landlords and both tenants know the system better. And I don't know if we ever talked about openroom.ca, but that's a great tool for landlords and it keeps the tenants accountable.
I don't think we've dove in yet to open room
We'll
or
talk
single
about that.
key or
Yeah.
front lobby, but these are definite tools, definite websites that are great for all landlords and everything like that out there to have. And we will do something about that for sure. I actually have a rep from front lobby. We use front lobby over single key, but again, six or half dozen probably as to what they're going to do. They're both helpful. Um, so here's one for you, just because a question was brought up the other day about broken windows and things going on at a property. Because one, it continues to happen. Now they're saying that it's just the neighborhood and everything like that, but is that a landlord's constant responsibility? If it's shattered, obviously it's dangerous. But what about if it's just cracked or the screen is torn? Like, what? How does all that break down? What is the?
So I always tell people it only becomes a problem when it is a problem. So under section 20 of the Residential Tenancies Act, the landlord needs to upkeep and repair the property. So window screens, which by the way are very inexpensive, it's easy to repair. Cracked windows you should be fixing. The thing is that if the if by chance this is happening every 2 months, 3 months, or it's constant, then obviously there's another problem here. Is that it could be an outside factor if it's in a bad area, maybe someone's throwing rocks or whatever. But then the question is, why are they throwing rocks? Well, the only reason why I would say that is because maybe there's drug activity going on and they're trying to signal the person in there. Because I had that problem in one of my properties. So if it keeps occurring, the landlord still needs to fix it, but then they can file something against the tenant called an N5, where they will now explain to the board that they've keep fixing the window. They believe that it is the tenant's problem, that they're the problem of why it keeps happening. And then, unfortunately, Kevin, the board is the one that makes that final decision on whether it is the tenant's responsibility for the window or the landlord. Unfortunately, the landlord still has to fix that window first and then go to the board because you're going to need to show that they did fix it, there was a cost involved, and obviously they're trying to pass that cost to the tenant. Just on a side note, even if you get judgment against the tenant, would you be able to collect that money? And that's where it gets a little finicky because even if you win, is are you going to be able to collect that money? Because some tenants are living hand to mouth. So,
Yep, then you're right. How are you going to be able to collect it? How are you going to get it? And then if you're chasing it, spending money to try
but
to,
either way, you should be maintaining the property. Okay.
yep, definitely. Well, I think this has been a great conversation as always. I think that there's been some good information, and really, at the end of the day, the moral is make sure you understand your options, your obligations, your responsibilities, and your rights, and everything before you are acting on anything. If you need any help, as always, reach out to us. Reach out to Rob at Stonegate Legal Services for any of your tenant and landlord issues in the province of Ontario, and they will help you out. But yeah, I guess unless Rob, you have anything that you want to add there, let's wrap this one up today.
No, no, I think we covered a lot today, and we sparked about other subjects that we could talk about in other podcasts that we can do. Okay.
Yeah, no, we'll definitely do something about tools again, folks. So stay tuned for that one. Um, and there's a whole bunch of other episodes that we did say that if you're thinking about buying or selling properties tenanted, we've covered that. And if you have any questions or anything that you want us to discuss, feel free to reach out to us. You can comment below. You can email us. If you really want to get old school, you can call us on that magical thing called the phone, and we can go from there as well. But, anyways, as always, thanks so much for listening. I hope you enjoyed it. Please continue to like, subscribe, and share with other Ontario landlords so we can continue to get the proper information and guidance out there. Rob, thanks so much for doing this, and we will talk to you all again soon. Bye for now.
All right.
Please remember, while we are professionals, this podcast is for informational and entertainment purposes only. The advice shared may not apply to your unique situation. Always seek personalized advice from a qualified professional before making any investment decisions.
Hey, everybody. Thanks so much for joining us this week. I hope you enjoyed the episode. If you're finding it informative and useful, make sure to like, subscribe, share with a friend so that we can keep getting the information out there to Ontario landlords. and keep on joining us. We'll see you next time.